So we're holding on the 8th chapter. For that matter, I do want to tell you guys that we did squeeze in one more class. It was too much for me, that big gap. And there's a few guys here. There's one new guy, and we finished the chapter 7. So we did squeeze in one more class. I'll tell you that night before Yom Kippur, right? Yom Kippur. Very appropriate because it's like a culmination of the.
And you got somebody who came?
Yeah. Actually, there was some new guys. What's his name? Two new guys. Whatever. Just think it was interesting, and it was appropriate for the time because Perek Zayin deals with tshuva. The Perek Zayin deals with the tshuva and the culmination of Perek Zayin as well. It's a different type of tshuva. It was very timely. So that's not the reason why I thought I would be able to squeeze it in, and eventually it worked out with the timing. So we're only Perek Ches. BAYT. Additional to what the Alter Rebbe writes in Perek Zayin about the animal soul itself, and the way he introduces the phenomenon of klipas nega, that neutral klipa, and everything else which comes from the neutral klipa, which can be elevated, as we said, like a carbon, a piece of meat, a fat piece of meat, excuse me, for the sake of the mitzvah, or different examples that Rabbi gives. As long as it's kosher, it's not necessarily, it's not holy before the Yid engages with it, but he could elevate it and make it something holy, as opposed to something which is intrinsically evil, which these are the shalosh klipas atmeis, which is completely prohibited, and Alter Rebbe explains what's the why that's the connection with the word asur. Asur means it's connected, it's anchored to the lowest level of klipas. They're impure, stay away from them, and chas v'shalom someone did engage with them, you need that special tshuva, etc., etc. So here the Alter Rebbe starts this 8th chapter, says is additional to the above mentioned. When you're dealing with a prohibited food, this is another reason why they're called isur, which again literally means prohibited, but Alter Rebbe touched. Isur means it's asur, it's anchored, it's tied, it's incarcerated in the world of shalosh klipas atmeis, the lowest level of impurity. Another reason why they're called isur, mipnei sh'af misha'achal machal isur b'loi heida, that even someone who ate, and we'll see what means even. Excuse me, in this context, that even someone ate something which is prohibited, and b'loi heida, he did not know that it was prohibited to eat, so he himself did it inadvertently. And why did he eat it? He ate it l'shem shamayim, for a godly sake. Now today gives right away example, a classic example. What does it mean for godly sake? This Hashem to serve Hashem with the strength and energy of that consumption of that food. And and not only he ate it for the sake of heaven, he continued to act heavenly subsequent to his eating, and with the strength of this consumption. So you see, the Alter Rebbe says, and he learned Torah and he davened with the energy of that food. So the Alter Rebbe says so many positive things of this scenario. He ate; it was prohibited. Most of that is the problem, right? But the food itself is prohibited. Let's look at his actions. The Alter Rebbe says a number of points over here which are on their own positive, or builds this picture so positively, and yet because the food what he ate and consumed is prohibited, there is a problem. What are the positive parts of this scenario? B'loi haida, didn't know it was prohibited. Mistake. Thought it was kosher. He thought it was the kosher butter, and he thought it was a kosher piece of meat, and he ate the other. Inadvertent. The second positive part of this scenario, l'shem shamayim, he ate it for a godly sake. He just didn't eat it just because he was just to eat. L'shem shamayim, I want to learn Torah. I want to finish eating. I'm going to run to the base of to learn Torah. That's why I'm eating. L'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. Like he says, "La'avodas Hashem b'kechachilahi," to serve Hashem with the energy of this strength of this food.
Where's he eating this food? Is it in his home or is it at
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where he's
Yeah, but
eating.
you think he would ask if he's not at home. He
No,
would say,
but
is
by
this
mistake, the
kosher?
person's saying...
He went, for example, he went off the shelf and he took the kosher piece of meat. He took the
Oh, I see.
non-kosher
Okay,
piece of meat.
unintentionally. I just that's what.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
So, but so there's so many positive dimensions to this scenario, which is played out. Rebbe plays this out over here. So apparently, you could say that there was a little mistake. A little mistake that it wasn't kosher, but everything should be put into place. Things should happen. We know that a person eats l'shem shamayim for godly sake, and then he goes ahead and follows through with the shamayim, which means he follows through with the heavenly conduct. Subsequent to his eating, things are happening. He's elevating what he's eating, and he's making the a dwelling place in this world. And this which he ate itself appreciates so much. The godly spark which is in this food which he usually eats appreciates so much to be elevated, to maybe be made a bracha with, and to serve the purpose of the person learning Torah, doing it. There's so much happening, positive things happening when someone eats something kosher and then he follows through. And Avodas Hashem, he serves God with the energy of this kosher piece of food he eats. So apparently,
the food would not let him. The food would not let
so
him
that's what he's saying. That's exactly what he's saying. That usually the things which so many positive things happen when someone takes a kosher food and consumes it and serves Hashem with the energy of this food, starting with the bracha, what he makes it. In this case, even though he did it unintentionally, and he did it for a godly sake, in other words, to serve Hashem with the energy, and he did it, and not only that, he followed through. Follow through means to say that not only when he ate l'shem shamayim, let's say, he can get distracted. So no, he did not get distracted. He followed through means to say with the energy of this which he ate, he went to learn Torah, or the vala which he ate, he did a mitzvah. So everything was good over here. Because this which he ate, like you were saying, because this which he ate is intrinsically evil, because it's connected to shalosh klipas hatmeis, the lowest level of impurity, all these things which happen, let's use the word happen, all these things which unfold so positively, had it been something kosher, does not happen at this time because this food is not kosher. That's why it's called asur. That's why it's called asur. It's tied down. Nothing is good as happening. The Rebbe continues, the energy of this food does not ascend and invest in the words of the Torah and the Tefillah which this person subsequently learned in daven. It's not happening. As if it would be if this which he consumed and ate was permissible. Because if it was permissible, it belongs to the middle klipa, to the neutral klipa, klipas nega. And klipas nega is waiting. That's what it's called nega. There's some light. When we explained this and elaborated on this quite in length, when we dealt with this idea of klipas nega. There's nega, there's light, and it's waiting to be elevated. There's an overt godly spark, or a godly spark which is overtly bright, not on the whole klipas nega, but the bright side, the lichtigkeit, the nega, which is waiting. It's intuitive to its readiness, or to its purpose, to be elevated to kedusha through the aisius, through the words and letters of Torah and Tefillah, where the person learns and davens subsequent to this eating. So there's so much transpired. There's so much happening over here when a person eats the permissible, the Shem Shamayim for the godly, for the heavenly sake, and he pursues and he continues with the Shem Shamayim. However, in this case, because it's all this does not happen, it does not ascend, it does not invest in the words of prayer and the words of Torah. Why? Because it's incarceration in the hands of the impure forces which come from Shalosh Klipas Hatmeis. That's why that's another reason it's called us. Before, the Alter Rebbe explained why is it us, that's why the chapter begins with. Before, the Alter Rebbe spoke about the mere consuming, that it's usur, you're eating something which is anchored, usur, it's anchored and tied to Shalosh Klipas Hatmeis. Here the Alter Rebbe says, and taking to the next level, then not only the problems of me eating that and connecting myself to Shalosh Klipas Hatmeis, what if I ate it for a godly sake? Not only that I didn't know it was non-kosher, and I ate it for godly sake and I followed through with a godly sake, all this which happens when somebody eats something which is mutter, like it says K'maya Heter, is not happening because it's tied down to Sitrach and Sholosh Klubzat Meis. And the Rebbe continues more so. I would say that is something which is a Torah prohibition, a clear-cut, non-kosher piece of meat. Torah prohibition, not allowed to eat it. But what about the Rabbanon, something which is a rabbinic prohibition? Well, let's say it's lighter a little bit. Maybe that could push through and be elevated through the Torah and Tefillah, the learning Torah and the prayer, which a person learns in prayer, is subsequent to eating that. It's just a Rabbanon, it's a rabbinic prohibition. Comes Al Rebbe, he says, because the Rabbanon has the same word, they're both Isur, they're both Asur. There's no other word which the term is used for her prohibition of the Rabbanon, or rabbinic prohibition, or a Torah prohibition. They're both called Asur. Asur mean they're both tied. And the Chamurim famous, the Gemara says, Chamurim Divrei Seif Mesim Divrei Torah, that the words of the Rabbanon are more grave and more severe, even more than the words of Torah. We have it in a number of places. We find this in the positive and the negative, and there means a positive mitzvah of the Rabbanon, and the negative mitzvahs, that there's a certain graveness in transgressing a Rabbanon even more than Divrei Torah. From a certain perspective and point of view, naturally on the surface, the Reis says that the Reis and the Rabbanon, but the Gemara says Chamurim Divrei Seif Mesim Divrei Torah. So it makes no. So the Alter Rebbe says it doesn't make a difference, or it's rather irrelevant if it's a Torah prohibition or it's prohibited only in the Rabbanon. Therefore, the Yetzer Hara, in the evil inclination, which again classically known as the Yetzer Hara, and the energy which has the desire, the passion for Dvar Masurim, for the prohibited of Shade Mishaid Nechroim. It's called the Shade, which is a demon, a goyish, a alien demon, a goyish demon. Later Alter is going to say when a person has a desire for something which is mutter, permissible, but it's an unkosher desire. It's not for l'shem shamayim. It's not genuine. There's no godly purpose. It's a demon which is pushing him. But it's called Yehudaim, like the Jewish demon as opposed to the non-Jewish demon. Literally, Nuchroi means the Gentile. It's the alien. It's the strange. It's the alien energy, because it is ultimately connecting a person to things which are prohibited, not only permissible with a ungodly passion, but something which is prohibited. It's called Shade Mishaid Nuchroin. In other words, it's a demon from the non-Jewish. They're not, and there's no kedusha there. There's no holiness. That's why it's called Nuchroin. It's strange, which is Yetzer Hara Shulam Mesevit Gilum, which is the Yetzer Hara of the Umays, the nations of idol worshippers. That's why it's called Gentiles. Their soul come from the three clips of things, like the Rebbe explained, elaborated in the very first chapter. So when a Yid does that, which is classically associated with the Goy, the Yid, that is the Yid carries that similar Yetzer Hara. Because the Yetzer Hara which persuades a Yid to eat something, or persuades him to deliberately do something wrong, or even inadvertently do something wrong, that energy which pushes a Yid to engage in things which are asurim, are prohibited, it's the Goyish Yetzer Hara. What's the connection to Goyish Yetzer Hara? Very clear. The Alter Rebbe wrote in the first chapter, the Yetzer Hara comes from Shalosh Kivsat Meis. The Goy's Yetzer Hara, Goy's Nefesh comes from Shalosh Kivsat Meis. He doesn't even have the Nefesh Bahamis of the Yid. We mentioned a few times that the advantage of the Yid of the Goy is not only that he has a godly soul, and the Goy only has the animal soul. The animal soul, what the Yid has, the Goy also doesn't have. But again, that's the classical Goy as opposed to the Chassidim Seilu. We're not going into it here at all. We mentioned this a few times. So the Yetzer Hara, when there's a Yetzer Hara which tells the Yid to do something which is outright prohibited, that's a Goyish Yetzer Hara. Because the Goy comes from Shalosh Kivsat Meis. Masha'en Kein, as opposed to Yetzer Hara, v'koyecha misavel dvar mutarim. The Yetzer Hara and that energy which has a passion to, which has a lust, which has a temptation, a desire to the permissible. And what is the problem? Lamalis tabase, to fulfill its covet, its temptation, to, again, without a godly purpose. The thing itself is still mutar. It's a demon. There's nothing holy about it. if you're not doing it for godly sake, you're not consuming it for godly sake, you're not engaging with that davar mutar for godly sake, it's called a shade, it's called a demon, because there's no absolute godly scenario playing out, but it's the Yiddishi, it's a hard. Shade mishade Yehudaim. It's the Jewish demon. And again, because the Jew has the nefesh bahamis. Right? Even the nefesh bahamis, it's the Jew has the nefesh. And the Jewish nefesh bahamis is a step higher. It comes from klipas nega, as you remember we learned. So, because it comes from klipas nega, and it's again associated with nefesh bahamis, it's called the Jewish demon. And again, where is the relevance? Clearly, it has an easier ability to ascend to holiness when, as we mentioned before, the person who does a regular tshuva, because again, he doesn't need that tshuva me'avarabba, because he didn't anchor himself into the world of Shalosh Kivas Atmeis. It was just something that he descended, and he just has to yank himself back up. That's why it's again associated with called the Yiddish Yitzhahara, because it's associated with Klipas Nega. However, even this is which was permitted prior to its being ascended to holiness, to the world of Kedusha, it's still Sitra Achra. It's not so anchored in Sitra Achra, but it's still Sitra Achra, and it's still Klipa. And V'gam Acharkach, the Rebbe tells us that even you brought it up, you elevated it, like someone's going to say, okay, I'm going to engage in everything which is permissible, and overly indulge everything is permissible. There's a momentary problem that I'm bringing it down, including myself, into the world of Shabbos, but it's not. I'm not completely tied. I'm not completely anchored. It's associated with the Jewish demon as opposed to the Shalosh Kivas Atmeis demon. And what happens after? I'll do a little tshuva. You don't need that special tshuva because you didn't drop into this Devarim Asurim, you didn't drop into Kol Shalosh Kivas Atmeis, or into something which is intrinsically connected to Shalosh Kivas Atmeis. So this is good. Overly indulge in the physical, like the Ramban said, can be novel b'shusatayr, one can be actually unethical, a disgusting, novel literally means a disgusting, abhorrent life with the permission of the Torah. The Torah says it's mutter. But the Alter Rebbe says over here, but at the time if you're engaging with it, there's no godly purpose, it's also dropping to the world of something. It's not as anchored, it's not called asur, because it's not intrinsically prohibited, but it's right there. So the person will say, okay, I have a suggestion. Because the Alter Rebbe told me that something which is mutter could much easily be elevated to Kedusha, so I'll just do that little tshuva. I don't need that special tshuva that Alter Rebbe dealt with. When you eat something or when you engage something which is prohibited, like again a prohibited food, Alter Rebbe gives a prohibited relationships and so on, it's just a matter of elevating something. It just went. Like I say, you could go into a valley, or you're tied to the valley. You go into the pit, you get up. And I'll do that. I'll overly indulge myself into the physical. And true, there's a momentary problem. Even though the healthy Yid would say, how can I dirty myself even momentarily? Even I'm not locked in. Even I'm not tied down to that impure force. But if you think about Shalosh Kivas Atmeis, it's literally a dirty place. Excuse my it's something which is impure. So even a healthy Yid would say, even momentarily, I'm not going to. But let's say the Yid wants to stretch it. Momentarily, I have no problem. It's mutter, lavsa l'kedusha. Could be elevated, and if it be elevated, so I'll indulge, enjoy myself, and then eventually you don't need that special tshuva. Even the easier tshuva is going to elevate it. So it seems good. Alter Rebbe says you should know achakach nishar memenu nishar memenu nishar davik b'guf. Even when you elevate it, there's a little mark which stays in the body. It's like you take a pencil, write on something on paper, take an eraser, the best eraser, you can always see a little mark. So the Rebbe says even something which is permissible and you elevated it, a little mark remains in the body. And that's and after 120, Hashem cleanses us. That's the whole process of purgatory. It's not a punishment tit for tat. Hashem wants to bring the neshama into a world which is kuli tov, all good, all holy, all pure. So the Alter Rebbe cleanses it. Can't go into the king's palace when there's dirt. So that's the whole point of Gehenim. It's not a chas v'shalom. It's not a revenge. Hashem Himself says in the Torah, "Don't take revenge." Why would He just say, "You did that? I have you in my hands. I'm going to hurt." No, it's a matter of cleansing the neshama. So that's purgatory. Gehenim is really a kind of serious cleansing. Here, person doesn't have to go to Gehenna yet because he consumed the mutter, but because Lefi Shah, because even part-time, even he did that tshuva nechayna, the appropriate tshuva, to elevate the energy of this davar mutter because he didn't need l'shem shamayim. But you should know there's going to be a Rishima. And if there's a Rishima after 120, it doesn't just need Gehenim, it needs not Gehenim, but it still needs some cleansing. There is a still mark on the paper. And because Al Tereva says mikol meichel mashka, because every consumption of every food or drink, nase tekiv udam ubasmi bapsari, every food or drink immediately becomes blood and flesh and part of the structure of flesh of the human being, which because it becomes part of him. So the fact that he did tshuva, there's always fine. It was permissible, and he did tshuva, he elevated it, but there's still, because it becomes part and parcel of him, a mark still remains. So we should not be lenient and say, okay, it's all mutter. If it's mutter, I'll overly indulge in it, and I'll do that tshuva. So first of all, he says you're going to do the tshuva, because usually one indulgence brings another, and brings another, and brings another, and at the time, it's not, again, asur. Remember we said asur is not something which is intrinsically prohibited, so it's not asur, it's not yanked, it's not incarcerated or connected to shalosh kubzat meis. It's just because of it's circumstantial, it's because of the way I'm eating it. And we said before, even a healthy person doesn't want to be there, but let's say he elevates it. But because this food became part and parcel of him, a mark remains in the body. Therefore the body needs lechibut hakever. It's a famous two things they do, which is prior to purgatory. It says they shake the kever. I don't think it's a physical way, like no one's going down, no angels go down to the actual grave and shake up the grave. But it is a metaphor for, like, you got to shake off something. You have something that is a bit dirty, or like a towel. You want to dust a towel. You go out and you shake the towel. The shake takes out the dust, which did not come out just from the wash or anything else. There's something of shaking up something, the stain comes off. So it says this one thing. Another thing is it's called, we got to kafakel. It says there's two angels, one standing on one side of the world and the other, and they throw his neshama like a football. When you take a dirty football, throw it forcefully, the guy's going to catch it much cleaner than when you sent it. Absolutely. Because the throw shakes off something. If it's going to be 100% clean, then throw it a few more times back and forth, something's going to happen. So again, it's not physically. No malach is taking the neshama, is physically throwing it. But it says, Chassidus Al Rebbe explains, it's the pain of the contrast. Basically what they do is, they show the person, something this person's caught red-handed. Caught red-handed. He's stealing or something. Like you show him what he's involved in, how shameful it is. That is kind of it says that's the two malachim, one on one side of the world, one on the other, that they show the person and show the neshama how he's overly indulging himself in the physical, and then they bring him into this whole all spiritual domain, Gan Eden or whatever it is, and the neshama is just embarrassed. Here he's in a pure place, and they show him what he was involved in. That embarrassment, that shame, takes away the stain which has been accumulated through his involvement in Yom HaSeh. So it's not physical, but there's the famous two, treatments, if you will, to the stains of the neshama prior to Gehenna, because he doesn't deserve Gehenna. He's not deserving of Gehenna because it was mutter, it was permissible. For the prohibited, chas v'shalom, someone doesn't do tshuva, there is the phenomenon of Gehenna because he engaged himself with something which is totally shalosh kibsat meis. But when you're dealing with something permissible, you can't say Gehenna. But on the other hand, there is, because he ate it with an ungodly intention, so partially, so to say, he slipped into that world of shalosh kibsat meis, not tied himself to shalosh kibsat meis. It's not usher, it's mutter, means to say it's easy to yank out, and he will. Even if he does, there's always a little stain. And to get rid of the stain, it says the person needs chibut hakever. They shake the kever. Again, it's not physical, but it's a certain idea that linakaise, in other words, to cleanse him, to purify him, mitumase, from his impurity, shekibil banas elam hazer, which he received and accumulated with his pleasures of this physical world, with the benefits the gains of this physical world, v'tanugov, and its pleasures. Mitumas klipas nega, from the impurity of klipas nega. You see, it's not shalosh klipas atmeis over here. It's in the purity of klipas nega. There's a neutral klipa, because it was mutar, it was permitted. It was permitted. And the Shaitan Yehudain, again, we call it the Jewish demon, because it is the Jewish, because even the Nefesh Bahamis, rather, the Yid comes from shalosh klipas atmeis. Ela imkein, as opposed to Mishaleinenu me'olam hazeh, someone that never had any pleasure from this physical world, a kol yom of all his life. And guess who he gives as an example? Ki Rabbeinu HaKodesh. Rabbeinu HaKodesh was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the author of Mishnayos. At a certain point, he picked up his 10 fingers and he said, my Creator, not sure exactly the words, but he knows and he guarantees, and I guarantee, I never had any pleasures of this world. This is fascinating that the Rebbe uses Rabbeinu HaKodesh as an example. And the Rebbe elaborates on this with such a beautiful, brilliant explanation. We know the life. So firstly, what the Rebbe is getting at, before we speak about this culmination of this Rabbeinu Hakodesh, the Rebbe is saying that there's a problem of deriving pleasure of this world without a godly purpose. Doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean like when someone has a sandwich, he has to feel that he's eating stones. Does he have to go eat stones because chas v'shalom should have anah? There's certain people, there's obviously different levels. Certain people make sure that nothing they put in their mouth is as a. That there's certain people which are again in Musar, people who are Bali Musar, they fought with themselves that not one bite that they ever take a bite of beast, they should have any pleasure, because they don't have any pleasure of this world. Then there's the Bali people who are more associated with Chassidus, they get involved in something so spiritual, like Chassidus or godliness. They're so invested in this, so in the very beginning they don't pay much attention to what they're eating. It's like a guy who just was notified he won a lottery. And he has to go sign the pay. He's going to go pick up his check, and they tell him, what are you running? You have to eat lunch. You eat lunch. You think he's going to remember? He probably won't remember the lunch he ate, or he frankly doesn't care what it tastes like. It's a good lunch, not a good lunch, a piece of bread, or B'chal not interested in eating lunch. In other words, he's in a different world, so these things are trivial to him. So that's again more of a deeper dimension of transcendence, a deeper level of transcendence. You're so involved in the spiritual, in godliness, in kedusha, in Torah, and even in your pursuit and engaging in Elokus as much as you can, however man can. Through Chassidus or any other transcendent limud. So you're not involved in the hana of elam hazeh. You care not if it's a red apple, a green apple, or such a taste or such a taste. You're in a different world. It's another Indian. But as opposed to somebody who derives pleasure from elam hazeh without a godly purpose. Or on the other hand, again, there's so many different levels of not having deriving pleasure of this physical world. You could be these two extremes, like what we said, or you could have someone in between that he has a no, he does taste the sandwich. It's normally someone asking him, he knows he ate a tuna sandwich and not a egg sandwich, as an example, but he's really not here just to appreciate the tuna sandwich. He just really needs the energy in order to do something good. So it's another level. He does feel the taste, but it's not about the taste. Ultimately, he's interested in doing something good. And obviously, again, between that, there's so many different levels. But here we're talking about somebody who has a nov from elam hazeh. It's permitted. It's there for me. Again, that's why the Rambam says, the Ramban, famous Rambam, is novel v'shus hatayr. Novel means it's an abhorrent way of living. To discuss the way of living with the Rishus HaTorah. Torah is permitted, they got to engage with it. And everything that he finds, and again, it's broken down to even small details. He finished eating, but he just saw, as I cut another chocolate, I have to consume it. It's permitted. Torah says it's permitted. I have to have it. It has to be part of me. It's not so. So it's Kaddish to Misik Mikdashim, which has to be sanctify himself. But here we're not going to the mitzvahs Kaddish Misik Mikdashim. It says if it's because you did not eat it with a godly purpose, or you didn't engage with that permissible with a godly purpose, so then you connected yourself, at least partially or part-time, to shalosh klipas atmeis. You didn't anchor yourself. Like remember we said it's not osur, it's mutar, which means it's easily could be yanked out. It's mutar, which means it's untied, right? Matir unties, matir asurim. It's untied. You could elevate it, but so first of all, again, the person, a healthy person, doesn't even want to be there even for a part-time because he knows it's impure. And as even when it's elevated, There's still a mark which is only, you get rid of it only through chibut hakever, as opposed to someone who never has enough melam hazeh. So again, we said never have enough melam hazeh. There's so many different levels in that. And again, to the extreme that someone never wants to even have any, doesn't even want to taste anything. He cancels kind of his taste buds or anything, because he wants to be completely. But interestingly, the Alter Rebbe uses ki Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Now let's look at the lifestyle of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, which again testified in himself that he never had enough melam hazeh. It's fascinating, because Rabbeinu HaKadosh was hana, pleasure of this world. Rabbeinu HaKadosh was a wealthy individual. Him and Antoninus, contemporaries. He was the Goyish, non-Jewish monarch, but they were good friends. They're both very wealthy. It says there were certain unseasonal vegetables. Today it's different. We're living more close into Maisa Mashiach. You could have around the year watermelons and around the year every time, because everything is imported. Again, we live in a very special, in a time which is a big of abundance. But in the yesteryears, to have unseasonal fruit and vegetables around the year was only by the very wealthy individuals. He says in the time of Rabbi and Antoninus, there was the chazeres, I think it was a vegetable, or the classical chazeres, whatever it exactly was. It was something which is unseasonal, but around the year never left their table, which was, again, the Gemara uses as a demonstration or an illustration of Rabbi's wealth. Rich man, had it all, and it wasn't in his cupboard, it was on the table, on his table. So how could this all go? How does this wealth and riches, and not only riches in the bank, but it was on the table, it was out, it was overt, his riches were so apparent and manifest in his life. How does this go together with that same man picking up his 10 fingers as he testifies he never had enough melam hazeh? And when and if it was the that poor person which really never had the chance, that poor Tanya or Amira, and he says, I never had a melam hazeh, I can understand. But Rabbi, this wealthy man, that all these good things were right in front of him, how does that work together? And the Rebbe says that's why the Rebbe brought this Rabbeinu HaKadosh to say, uses an example, not only because the Gemara says that he testified himself he didn't have enough, which, just to add to that, if he testified, that's how it was. Despite he had everything on his table, he did not derive pleasure from all this wealth just for the sake of pleasure, or maybe even no pleasure at all. He had it without pleasure.
But did he derive the pleasure for the sake of Hashem?
For sure, and it could even be that he was so involved in Hashem that all this what he had made no difference to him. It could even be, as you break it down to his consumption of that chazer, the unseasonal vegetable, it could be that his mind was in the Mishnayos and opening up another yeshiva somewhere. Even though on the books he was a very wealthy man, similar to the great. L'shem Shemaim, everything was L'shem Shemaim. I said you could say in this bracket of L'shem Shemaim, there's so many different levels. He was probably the highest level. That when he had the chazeres, we consumed that unseasonal vegetable, his mind was, where are we making sure to document the next Mishnah, and I don't care really. He probably didn't even know what he was eating. He didn't make it was not an issue at all what he was eating to him, and he didn't know what it wasn't something which he paid any attention or had any impact on him, because his mind was learning Torah and to write the Mishnayos. He had to document. He had a great big important mandate in his life. He was the one who anchored Yiddishkeit. Remember, that's why he wrote the Mishnah, even though Mishnah is part of the oral Torah, which really is not supposed to be written, but he saved Yiddishkeit. So he had all this wealth. He was on the books. He was a very rich man, but he did not have enough melam hazeh. And the Rebbe says that this is why the Alter Rebbe brings him as an example, additional to the fact that he was the one who testified, but the Alter Rebbe is really saying that a person could learn this Pedic and says, okay, if that's the case, I'm going to live in the park, sleep in the sand, with a pillow, I have enough from a pillow, or I'm going to sleep on a bed in a normal mattress, and eat a good tuna sandwich, and live normal, and have the lights on, and a hot shower. Might as well live in the park, and who knows, because so the Alter Rebbe says that's why the Alter Rebbe said Rabbeinu HaKadosh, because it's not, the Alter Rebbe didn't want to convey that message. He wanted to say you should have it, and you should be wealthy, and they should give you all the brachas. All the brachas. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, for that matter, had all the brachas from a famous mission. It says Kulim niskayma b'remevarim, wealth, beautiful children, longevity. He had it all. which was a Kiddush Hashem, the Mishnah says. Everybody saw this is what a Torah Yid is all about. He has it all. So Alter Rebbe is dafka saying, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, no, we're not supposed to live that kind of segregated, separated, isolated life, mamash, to eat grass. We should have all the blessings that Hashem gives us. But together with that, to work on ourselves, to be in a higher plane, that our life should not consist of deriving pleasure, or even lower than that, chas v'shalom, overly indulging ourselves, and even lower than overly indulging ourselves in the physical. That's why he used the Lashon Rabbeinu HaKodesh. And then adds another beautiful thing, it says, Ki Rabbeinu HaKodesh. Rabbeinu, because he was called the Rebbe, he had a number of names. He was called Rabbeinu also, true. But why did the Alter Rebbe use Rabbeinu? Rabbeinu literally means our Rebbe. Our. Because the Alter Rebbe was really trying to say, this is the symbol, or the type of person which we should try to adapt to. Ours. Ours means to say that Hashem should give the Yid all the brachas which he gave Rebbe. Rabbeinu, something personal to us. We should adapt this type of life. But together with that, we have to know that we have to emulate the Rebbe's, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, this man, that even though that Hashem will give us all the brachas, and He will give us all the brachas what a biggest person needs, and beyond. Rebbe had enormous wealth. There's two people in all of his times, him and the great non-Jewish monarch, which was naturally very wealthy. He is the only one who has ours at his table on seasonal fruit, which means the Eibishter should give all the brachas to all the Yidden, and we should live a normal life. But in the same token, he asks from us. We have so much. There's so much information, or there's so much given to us, that we could work on ourselves to live on a high, that despite all the brachas Hashem gives us, not to chas v'shalom lose focus of what we're here for, and to truly serve Hashem with joy and gladness of heart. And that's why the Alter Rebbe used this lashon, Ki Rabbeinu HaKadosh. You could have it all, but live the life which you ought to live, and live it with joy again, and to live of gladness of heart. Have a great evening.